Hi, I'm Master Cherbolenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis, of a chess.com game played between 1016 versus 1024. Let's start. Alright, so e4, e5, knight f3 attacking the pawn, developing the knight, d6 protecting the pawn, knight to c3. This is not the best move. It's okay, but not the best, because the most active would be to play d4. This is just more aggressive. When you play knight to c3, you do not really attack anyone. Whereas when you play d4, you immediately attack black's center. And now they have to decide what do they do. If they take, then they give up the center. There won't be any more central pawn on e5. So thus we have the only central pawn, and thus we dominate the center. And now we can take over queen. And if knight c6, simply bishop b5, right? Let's say bishop c6, we could just take. Bishop takes, and now knight c3. Followed by, like, let's say bishop g5, castle long, maybe put the h-rook on e1, and then either play knight d5 or pawn to e5 with advantage. So that is if they take, or if they do not take, if they play knight to d7. Now, instead of playing simply knight to c3, a much better move would be to play bishop to c4, because the bishop on c4 puts pressure on f7 very quickly. Now we have a huge threat of like knight g5. Knight g5 is very difficult to defend against it, and now black already is in big trouble, plus this also prepares the castle. And just to show you like a line, let's say if black plays like h6, we could just take. Like h6 to prevent knight g5, right? Because if we just go like this, we could just play like knight g5. And it's over, right? So the h6, but when we just take. Now if we take with a knight, we simply take the knight. Pawn takes, and now bishop takes f7. King takes f7, queen takes d8. Game over. Do you see? Or if king e7, well, we just won a pawn, and we could just take the queen, just let's say castle, I don't know, and we're just up a pawn, and plus this pawn is isolated, so it's completely winning. And so they cannot take with a knight, they have to take with a pawn. And here, I believe I can play bishop takes f7. King takes f7, knight takes c5. Now we cannot take the knight, because then we just take the queen. So we have to move the king, but where? If we go, let's say king... e7, we'll have just knight g6. We just win the rook back. If we go king e8, we have queen h5. King e7. Now, at the very least, we have knight g6 check. At the very least, and just win the rook back. But we could also play queen f7. King d6, knight c4 check. Now, if king c6 versus queen d5 checkmate, the king has no moves, right? Knight just takes on b6. So there's no king b6, so it's just checkmate. So king to c5, again check. King b4, and now there's a million checkmates. One of them is like a3, king a4, b3 checkmate, right? But there's a million checkmates. And so we'll have to go maybe king e6. But king e6, there's like this, check. Here, I believe there should be this, check, king takes, knight c3, king d4, queen d5, it's just checkmate. Finally, maybe there's queen of c, king of 6, and this is a bit more maybe complicated, but still black's king is very weak. Maybe there's even something like check here, with the idea of this. This might be interesting, right? There's also f4 check and bishop f4, and when we take, there's like knight c3, all that stuff. So still should be very good advantage for white, maybe even winning, right? So that's my point. Like when you play bishop to c4, you have an immediate threat against black's weakest point, which is f7, which is the Achilles heel in chess. And so even h6 doesn't work. And so it's very difficult already to play here as black. Whereas when you play knight to c3, you give black an additional key tempo to castle. So what do I mean? So black plays knight f6, bishop c4, bishop e7, and now already knight to g5 is too late because black can castle, and the rook on f8 guards the f7 pawn. You gave them an additional tempo to develop one of your minor pieces, bishop or knight, and thus to castle in time. Whereas if you start with bishop c4, your bishop is still on f8, so we're not in time to castle. So the rook protects f7. This is a rule of thumb. In these kind of positions, don't play knight c3. Prioritize kingside minor piece development, and 1, so that you can quickly castle, and 2, so that you can put immediate pressure on f7. Okay, so already knight c3 is inaccurate. pawn to c6. I mean, okay, but I mean, why not just develop? Like, just develop, right? So that you're in time to protect f7 with a rook. So knight f6, of course, would be the most logical move. But okay. d4. Black decided to take. If knight d7, there's again this bishop c4, right? Attacking f7. So black decided to take, okay. But now white has this nice center. So now white dominates. Oops. Now white dominates the center. And black has this like weak pawn on d6 potentially. So I can potentially attack, you know, with like bishop f4, queen d2, put a rook on d2. It's always going to be a weak pawn. Unless black finds a way to play d5. But then when we take, we have to be able to take back not with a pawn, because then it will become isolated weak, but take back with a piece. Then black will be fine. But I think white can prevent that. What? This is crazy. This makes no sense. A normal move would be like knight f6. This is how you should have gone, right? Like knight f6, and then bishop e7, castle, put a rook on e8, obviously my open file, put pressure on e4, maybe develop this knight somewhere, maybe like this and this perhaps, or to e5, and maybe at some point try even and push d5, would be one idea. Or because the knight on c3 guards this key e4 pawn, black can try and get rid of this knight, right, from c3, play b5, b4 in the future, so that they can move our knight away, so that they can put more pressure on e4, you know, something like this. But yeah, h5 is of course very bad. White played simply bishop e2, that's okay, it's just a normal move, that's okay. There's many moves I could have played. There's also bishop e3, and then queen d2, long castle, you know, and then maybe like pawn f3, maybe develop this bishop to c4, attacking f7, bring the rook to e1, just normal, typical development. There's also even bishop f4, by the way, and then again queen d2, long castle, but the bishop on f4 puts pressure on d6. So you just go bishop f4, then you play queen d2, then you castle long, and then all you do is you move a knight, you remove this knight from d4. You just play like knight b3, say, or knight f3 or something. And then you have triple attack, the bishop, the queen, and the rook on d1, attacking d6. And then black is in big trouble. So I think bishop f4 would have been also very good. But I play bishop e2, okay, that's okay. g6, okay. Castles, okay. Alright, okay. Bishop g5, yeah, fine. I mean, I see the point. Black wanna unpin, because there's this annoying pin, but on the other hand, it's a bit incongruent to play g6 and then bishop e7. It's usually not good. Because when you play g6, you weaken all these dark squares, so then you need the bishop to protect those. So if you play bishop e7 but you play g6, who's gonna protect g7, h6? So it's a bit incongruent. So I think more congruent would be to play bishop g7 to protect these squares like as well. And then you can always move the queen away like queen c7, you know. You can also protect the knight additionally with knight bd7. But yeah, I think bishop g7 would have made more sense. But okay. Oh yeah, now this is weird. Now this is not good. See, he played bishop e2 and then bishop c4. It's not that c4 is bad for the bishop. It's in fact a very good diagonal. It's probably the best diagonal for the bishop, actually attacking f7. But if he has committed to bishop e2, it's now kind of weird to go bishop c4. He's just wasting a tempo. He should have played bishop c4 immediately without bishop e2, if that was his plan. Then why play bishop e2? But if you played bishop e2, already stick to it and find a better plan, I think. So I think what other move would make here a lot of sense? The most logical move would be, to me, would be like f4. Of course, f4. We need to play aggressively, not with just the pieces, but also the pawns. You should be not just piece play, but also pawn play. Why f4? So we're looking for two pawn breaks. You should always look for pawn breaks. Otherwise, you cannot win. You cannot just win with piece play. You need a pawn break. And now we see here two pawn hooks. What is a pawn hook? Meaning you can use his pawn with your pawn to make a pawn break to open up files. Okay? So d6 and g6 are both advanced pawns of our opponent, so they are pawn hooks. We can use them with our pawns to open up a file. So for example, we could play f5 and then open up the f file. Or we could play e5. You know, and then again, if we take, and then we open up the f file, we open up our rook. So for example, let's say black castles, right? One idea could be f5. We put pressure on this g6 pawn. Now, I mean, if they take, let's just over, we just go like knight f5, and let's say they take, we just take over rook, and now we have an open file. Our rook is very good, putting pressure on the f6 knight, putting pressure on the f7 pawn, the h5 pawn is gone. Also, there's no pawn on the g file, so black's king is completely weak. We could just later attack it on the g file, it has no coverage. So this is just game over, you know, so we cannot take. Well, if they don't take, well, we could take anyway. Oops. And then the g6 pawn will be, so for example, let's say we play like, I don't know, some move, knight bd7 or something. Well, actually it's a mistake, because when we just take, and then just like knight e6 and double attack. But I just make some random move. Okay, let's say here, and we could play, for example, you know, we could like play bishop d3, but it has a specific idea. Let's say a4. Now we can like potentially take, and then like in the future e5 maybe, right? And then like take on g6 with a bishop, something like this. So it has a specific idea, bishop d3 in this case, or we could play queen d3. Let's say a4. Queen d3 even better actually. And then like takes, and then e5, right? Takes and then queen g6, and it's just completely winning. So there's that. We could also just play like normal moves like queen d2, perhaps rook f2, and then rook f1, double up over f1, and then take. Oops, then take on g6. You know, it's just clear initiative for white. So there's one idea. There's also potentially like e5 maybe. You know, e5, and then if they take, we take, and then we open up an f file, and we can also maybe like play like. Potentially, like for example, let's say here we could like take, they take, and now play like e6. Temporary pawn sacrifice. Yes, we lose a pawn, but look now at this pawn. Look at the king. It's very discovered. This pawn is weak, right? We could play like bishop c4, for example. The pawn is pinned. We cannot push it. g6 pawn is weak. Now, next we can also play queen d3. Attack g6. Activate this knight. Oops. Activate this knight to like e4. So we have huge compensation. Look at black's bishop on c8 is blocked by this knight. This knight is passive. This rook is passive. This king is weak. So remember this idea. This is a typical idea. You play e6, you sack the pawn, but you destroy everything in black's position. And so I think f4 is like very aggressive. Very aggressive. But the bishop c4 is a good placement for the bishop. But it's just that we wasted a tempo. But okay, d5. Yeah, this I'm not so sure, but this definitely should be a big mistake. Another rule of thumb is you should not play so aggressively in the center. You should not push your pawns in the center like this, opening the game up while you still have your king in the center, because you open your own king up. It's like a recipe for disaster. You should first castle, then you're safe to play d5 and stuff, but never play too aggressive with pawns with a king in the center. Okay, yeah, d5 mistake for sure. Just helps white open up the e file, right? Check. Yeah. Check. Of course, it's not the only move. Of course, white could also play like bishop f6. We can't take on c4 because you take on h8. We have to take. We can go maybe rook e1 first, check, intermezzo, so that they cannot. So if they move a king, we lose the ability of castling. If they play bishop e7, we go knight d5. We win the pawn, plus we also win the game because now we cannot defend e7. If we go knight c6, we just take. Takes, we just take. Right, and so we have to play king f8 and not just knight d5. We win the pawn, but also have very active pieces, active knights, active bishop, and also black lost his ability to castle. And so this is a very good advantage for white, very big advantage. So I believe, yeah, actually probably bishop f6 is the best. Yeah, it seems to be absolutely the best. But okay, bishop b5, white played still advantage, of course. Here. Okay, rook e1. It's just that see here black managed to castle, plus white did not win any pawn, so it's not as big of an advantage, but it's still pretty good. Knight e2. Now this is a bit passive. Why go knight e2? It's too passive. First, we always need to look at sacrifice. Always begin your thinking process with sacrifice. The first thing I'd look at would be a move like this. Most likely it does not work. But that's not the point. The point is you want to look at the sacrifice. Because sometimes it might work. Queen e7, knight takes d5. Now, where does he move queen? Because like, if he moves here, here we have a brilliant tactic. Here you can play knight f5. Now, if he plays queen takes d5, you go knight e7. Double attack. king moves. Let's say king g7, knight takes d5. If he takes this knight, we go knight takes f6, check, but also attacking with d6 queen. He cannot take with the queen because we just take the queen, and if he takes with the knight, we just take the queen as well. So it's game over. Do you see? So he has to like move the queen, but where? I mean, if he moves here, there's this, and if he moves here, we have even like this. So if he moves here, we have, well, this maybe not, because he just takes. But if he moves queen e6, yeah, maybe queen e6 he can move, but then, yeah, we have all sorts of checks, I don't know. Maybe like, even like this, king moves, or like this, or I don't know. Where's the queen? Yeah, like this, at the very least we have this, or... Yeah, it's interesting anyway. Maybe he can play like here immediately. Maybe this is a better move. Queen. Maybe like takes. Then I don't know, maybe pawn f4, but there's the queen e3. I guess black should be fine. But my point is you should always look at sacrifice first, okay? Because you never know. Now, if not this sacrifice, another move I look at it would be like queen f3 maybe. I activate my queen, I connect my rooks, and I attack d5. Now, I don't know if I can play knight d5 immediately. For example, let's say a6. Because why? Because when we just take, and if I take the knight, I just lose my bishop. And if I take the bishop, we take back with the knight. I was saving the knight. But I put pressure on it. I also prepare maybe this move, and activate the rook, and put it against the queen, you know? I just put pressure. So I think this would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I think queen f3 is very good. Probably the best, yeah. But yeah, knight e2 is too passive. I mean, maybe white's point is to play c3, 45 a knight, but it's too passive. Knight e4, okay, takes. Knight f4, okay. Queen f6. Putting pressure on f3, yeah, even knight moves. What? Yeah, now this, maybe this was a mouse slip, I guess. g3. What if I g5? Probably g5, there's like knight h3, right? G5 knight, or yeah, knight h3. But of course, maybe there's something even safer. Oh, I'm not sure. No, probably g3, g5, knight h3. And when your black goes g4, simply knight back to f4, and white should be fine. Yeah, g4 of course is the losing move. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, okay. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.